you told me that one of the big experience that you've been through recently is acquiring an akiya in the countryside of Niigata in snow country.
Yes.
Yukiguni. So can you tell us about how that came to happen?
Sure. So during Corona, like a lot of people, I was, stuck at home, and I guess I was just getting a bit bored, and you start to think about what you want out of life. I guess a lot of people went through this experience, right? It's like, what are your priorities? What's important? And it was kind of started as a distraction. I just wanted something to focus on. So I started looking for akiya around a certain area. So I decided to choose an area called Myoko in southern Niigata prefecture. So it's near the border with Nagano. So I just started looking around there because I also started getting snowboarding during the pandemic as well. And that kind of matched my passion for snowboarding. I'm not sure, my hobby, I guess. So I started contacting the akiya banks around the area and going to see houses and investigating things. So it took quite a while, actually. It probably took about 6 months from when I started to when I bought the place. So
wow, okay.
Because there was quite a few challenges, actually, because it was during the Corona. So a lot of people probably don't know there was no lockdown ever in Japan. So but there was a lot of social pressure. So one of the things was that if you weren't supposed to travel between prefectures. So if you lived in Tokyo, you weren't supposed to travel to Kanagawa or Saitama or Osaka.
Or even Niigata, which is
further. Exactly. So every time they'd have a state of emergency, they called it, when the numbers peaked, they would they would say, I'm sorry, but if you're from Tokyo, you can't look at the akiya in Niigata because there's a state of emergency. So they keep getting in the way. So then they'd lift the state of emergency, and I'd immediately go over and start looking at akiya again.
So for anyone who doesn't know, akiya are basically empty homes in Japan, and there are quite a few millions of them now.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's an interesting phenomenon because it's due to a combination of things. It's not just the falling population, which is a major problem, but it's also the way that Japanese people think about houses. So it's people prefer new houses. They like new things in Japan. So the idea is if you're a family and you're looking for a house, the ideal is to build a new house. So I mean, even the terminology they use in Japan is kind of interesting. They call like new houses and used houses, because you don't talk about a used house market in other countries, but in Japan they talk about used houses. So, and the other thing is the value of a used house goes down rapidly. So if it's a 50-year-old house, it's virtually worthless.
Yeah, because most of them also are they're not built as multi-generational houses and homes, but just one generation. And then usually once the children move out, and maybe if the parents pass away, the children will get the land and they can destroy and rebuild if they want to, but usually they don't take over the same.
The other thing is Japanese houses aren't really made to last. They're kind of considered disposable. So those are the kind of different factors that are contributing towards the akiya problem, as they call it. But really, it's a great opportunity because there's so many of these houses, really interesting houses, quite often, and you can get them for virtually nothing.
There's always online we can see that you get a house for free in the Japanese countryside.
Yeah,
is it really free?
It's not free.
It's not free.
It's almost free. Well, I mean, you can. I have a friend who bought a place with an enormous property section for 300,000 yen.
So that's about $2,500.
Yeah, about that. So, but I mean, that was the second house he bought. So the first house was more expensive. The second one was because he was kind of involved with the community, and he had he knew all the people in the village, and the guy approached him and said, would you want to buy my house for 300,000 yen? And he's, yeah, sure. And but the thing is, it's not really a free or 300,000 yen house. It's a massive fix-up job. So even, my place, I spent relatively little on buying it. I could say I bought it for 1.2 million yen, which
So
is about less than 10,000, about $9,000 or something. And since then, I've spent much more than that on making it livable, because it's an old house.
So the process for you to get that was to look at an akiya bank. So they are basically just a list that every city usually has for all the empty houses in the city's kind of area.
Yeah.
And you can look at a place. You can apply online. Do you need to live in Japan to apply?
You don't need to. Oh, yeah. It's okay. There's a lot of questions there. So, first, akiya bank is it sounds a little bit misleading. It sounds like they might do finance or something, but really it's more like a database, like just a list of houses. And every single akiya bank, there's various akiya banks. There's akiya banks for different cities and towns. There's also akiya banks for prefectures, regions. So there's hundreds of akiya banks in Japan, and they all operate quite differently. So for one akiya bank, I just had to do an online application. For another akiya bank, I had to write a letter to the mayor, and to be allowed into the akiya bank program. So
because they want to kind of restrict who moves to that area potentially.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So that they want people who are going to move there and live there, because the whole idea of akiya banks is they want to revitalize the town. So they don't want someone from overseas who buys the house and lives there for 2 weeks of the year, because it's still an akiya, it's still empty.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. So the preference is for people who want to move there. So if you say if you're from Australia and you want to buy a place in the mountains. There's different. There's so many different aspects to this. Like, one thing is the place I bought was in a village, so it's a place where regular people live. So you've got neighbors, and you're part of a community. Other places are what they call besochi. Like a beso is a villa or a holiday home. So those kind of places, they have a management company that kind of runs it, and you're not expected to live there the whole time. So there's different expectations depending on where you live.